Hi, everybody. Welcome to our next installment of In Conversation With. Today, we are thrilled to have Jamie Campbell Petty, the Executive Director of the Midwest Hemp Council, join us today. Welcome, Jamie, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Eric. It's good to see you and talk with you. It's been a little while.
It has been a while, and one of these days, we're going to meet each other in person. You have been like one of the women of this industry that I have most admired and enjoyed dealing with, and I really do look forward to that day where I get to give you a big hug in person.
Same. We keep being ships. We're two ships passing.
But it is inevitable. We'll get there. So to start off, tell us a little bit about Midwest Hemp Council and your history and what you do.
All right. Well, thanks, Erica. I think, a lot of people are familiar that we started in Indiana in approximately 2013 and helped Indiana Farm Bureau lobby for the support of the American Farm Bureau Foundation for their policy for hemp. And through that we were one of the first chapters with Hemp Industries Association alongside Colleen in Tennessee, Josh in Kentucky. But our state is obviously one of the most conservative states in the U.S., despite having what I thought, would help, which is a very strong history of growing hemp. But that didn't seem to matter too much. So we had a struggle. And it was completely grassroots. I'll never be able to thank so many people so much for all they did. So we did that starting in about 2013, going to 2015, and realized that at that point, we needed a way to bridge with other states around us, because we had built up national contacts. We were working with people on the national level, but we still kind of had, a big struggle going on to educate and so forth. And fortunately, Justin Swanson, Bo's Public Affairs Group, co-founder now of Midwest Hemp Council and president, showed up at a field day one day at Purdue, the only person in a suit and tie, and young man, and walks right up and within minutes asks if we would like him to take on as pro bono. Well, of course, you can imagine, of course, please. And then through that, our other co-founder, Alan Kimball, who a lot of people have met, Alan goes back several decades to the North American Industrial Hemp Council. And he came to me and said, we're all getting too old and we're tired, and I think we might disband, but I want to come work with you. So the three of us really decided that Midwest Hemp Council would be a good vehicle for advocacy, because we wanted to not just level the playing field not just for Indiana, but for everyone, because we all had such disparate policies, right, and handling of things. But then we were looking forward to the supply chain. How are we going to do this because then, of course, transportation, out-of-state, interstate transportation was an issue. So that's really where Midwest Hemp Council came from, is let's open the doors, let's work with our states surrounding us from seed to shelf on these issues, try to support one another. Love what we've been able to do. We were at one time in 28 states and had almost 400 members. And the format that we were looking for was to have a representative from each state that would, be the key point for Midwest Hemp Council, so that we could all level the playing field, help troubleshoot. And then COVID hit and overproduction of cannabinoid hit. So things changed up a bit. I'm still really proud of all the work that we've done, and in an industry that has, had some hurdles and some struggles. We have tried really hard to just be, to meet our mission statement, which is credible information, advocacy from seed to shelf with farmer-friendly regulations, and work on a supply chain. And that's what we're doing.
That's fantastic. Are there particular states you are focused on, or 26 states that's a lot of states.
It is. And I think currently today, as I sit here, it's about 22. But yes, our membership is heavily focused. Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, some from Kentucky. And those are I think, and maybe Missouri, but those are that's the heaviest concentration. But we're really fortunate in that, across, all of those equipment, whether they're in harvesting or processing, we really love having them there. We love being affiliates with NHA, with, other entities, so that at least we're all communicating, we're in the same spot. People have gotten tired of me saying it over the years, but co-opetition is still what I believe in. We are not we're not fully up and running as an industry. And so we need to be supporting one another, whether it's advocacy, whether it's growers, processors, whatever that might be. And that's really our goal with Midwest Hemp Council.
Yeah, and you've done a really good job, at least from my perspective, in trying to be that kind of Switzerland, bringing people together. I'm a big fan of collaboration too, and it's hard sometimes. There's a lot of history and a lot of egos, and we'll just leave it at that.
But I absolutely agree, and this is going to sound a little bit self-serving to some extent, but to be quite frank, I'm at the point where I believe it's really imperative that we be honest with one another and look at consolidation of resources, because with as many associations as we have, everything can get so diluted, whether you're talking about financial resources, human resources. Now, don't ask me what the perfect solution is, because I'm not sure. But I do believe it's something that as an industry we should look at. I like the concept. I did not get to go to Montana, unfortunately, but I know that the discussion there, one of them was focused on an alliance, a trade alliance, just similar to corn and soybean alliance, which is so very powerful. And I'd like to hear your take on that, because I personally, I very much believe that's where we need to go. I just feel it's a bit premature to come up to get that to happen, but maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I think now is the time to sort of create the foundations for that type of alliance. My understanding is that the alliance would not serve the function of most of the trade associations, that a lot of the, and going back a little bit to what you said about with the mission and the building of supply chains, because that's been a huge barrier, particularly on the fiber side of things, right? And the reality is that while we do have a handful now of processors who are able to output, a decent amount of raw materials, not one of them individually has the capacity to serve a major manufacturer. And I think that's where a trade alliance could really shine, in being able to take the resources of multiple decorticators, figuring out which ones produce technically similar specifications of output, and pooling those outputs in order to actually service somebody that needs a massive amount. Because I've heard, several different decorticators, like, we got a letter of intent for, X number of tons, and we can't fulfill it. And
right.
And so, I think, as frustrating as it is, some of this is good. To see that demand is there and that the supply is the difficult part right now is encouraging, but it's challenging, but I think that slow and steady is what's going to ultimately it's we're in this for the long haul. I don't think, well, I'll admit, I naively thought that when the 2018 Farm Bill passed, that life was going to be this bed of roses, and everything was going to be so easy, and I was going to work myself out of a job, right? Yeah, not so much, right? But it's good and bad, right?
It's like I've said probably 5 times in the last 24 hours. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and you just have to get used to it. So But yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that piece. I mean, once again, little by little, we're tackling chicken and the egg, right? It's constantly chicken and the egg, and we're getting there, and we're moving those hurdles, and we're figuring out which comes first in certain situations. And that is the part I love about the Alliance, because we do need to have that. I mean, I think, and Erica, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because my memory's shot, but I believe that for World War II, we had approximately 400 different facilities up and running. And I know in Indiana alone, we had 9. So now we're looking at a much broader option of offtakes, multiple different industries and so forth. So to think, as I've said multiple times, to think that 4 or 5 or 6 people are going to, or companies are going to have the corner on this ultimately is not realistic. We have to be geographically, transportation needs. I mean, we just have so many things to deal with, especially with climate issues. And, we've got drought one place and flooding another. And that's where I absolutely believe the Alliance is where we need to go, let alone the fact, look at the power that the Corn and Soybean Alliance possesses in lobbying and advocating and advertising and, exploration. So I am all about that. It'll just be, how do we get there? So
unfortunately, there's a lot of pressure and a lot of weight riding on the handful of companies that are out there doing it now, because they have to show success in order for investors to, actually invest in this space. Like, I half jokingly say, like, I don't really think there is actually any money out there, because everybody always uses somebody else's money. And like, nobody is ever the one who actually writes the check to make stuff happen, right? So for those few companies that have the funding and are operational, it's not quite fair to them, but like, there's a lot riding on their success. And I think we all need to collectively do what we have to do to make sure that they're successful, because we need to be able to then replicate that all throughout the country, because it's just so, you see the farmers that are super interested and want to grow it as long as they know they have an outlet to sell it. And you have the manufacturers that are anxious to look at using it, but they have to have a stable supply chain to do it. And there's just a whole lot of riding on that inner connective tissue. And I think we still have, a lot of work to go. Like, while ASTM is working on creating the standards for fiber, that's going to be an issue, because all decorticators are not created equal. They don't all output the same thing. But I think there'll be enough like product coming out that we would be able to homogenize and put them together to meet a contract. But yeah, it's a lot of work, and then of course we do still have all the regulatory hurdles. I know for us, like, we've been really focused on the hemp exemption to try to kind of separate fiber and grain from cannabinoid hemp, to reduce that burden on farmers that are traditional row crop farmers. Like, they're not used to having to have a special permit to grow one of their crops, or like, what do you mean I have to get a test, and then if I pass the test, then I'll be allowed to harvest, but I have to do it in 30 days. Like, what kind of nonsense is that if you're a corn farmer, right? Like, it doesn't make sense to them. And if we want hemp to be a commodity, like, we have to get rid of those types of hurdles.
Yeah, the testing has got to go away. In the right circumstances. Obviously, I understand some of the gray area over here with cannabinoid, but for grain and fiber, that's cut and dry. You talked about funding and money, and you and I touched on it earlier. I am very excited to see that, and I think there's still some awards to come, but I'm very excited to see that NHA and so many of the others were a part of funding from this last climate solutions money.
Yeah,
the climate smart commodities.
Yeah, and that was all specifically climate smart agriculture grants. But previous to that, we were part of a grant in Decatur that won an NRSC I always get it if it's NRCS or NRSC. I always get that mixed up.
I think it's NCRS, right?
NCRS,
Okay,
Natural Conservation Resource Services.
But yeah, I mean, I actually sat in on those initial calls, and I am very excited to see that. I think it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, so I mean, so getting the chance to prove out like hemp's role that it can play in watersheds and preventing runoff into, you know, protected areas is all going to be fantastic. The carbon sequestration piece of it, and that's all kind of over and above the more sustainable products and foods that can be produced from hemp. So we've seen some grants there come through. I think there's going to be some big opportunities for hemp in the new executive order that's revolved around the bioeconomy. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that if nothing else, I mean, on the one hand, it's like research, it all takes time. Like it all is like, but it's all, I mean, we're still researching corn, right? Like if we're real about it, they're still researching corn. So this research
and soybeans as well. You know, I mean, I read through, it's funny because I read through all of the different awards that were handed out, and, you know, everyone's looking for new ways, obviously climate smart, but also to expand market shares and to expand availability. I mean, availability is a problem too. And so, I mean, I know of several offtakes back to hemp. I know of several offtakes right now that, you know, our industry is very close to, if not on target, to being able to meet those specifications for products. But again, we can't fulfill the entire commitment. We don't have enough growth. So hopefully, it's just like with the, you know, I'm so glad that we didn't go the way of the cannabinoid industry with overproduction. And I do like the fact that for grain fiber, we've stayed slow and steady. But I do think that it's time, and hopefully this grant money will also assist that we can replicate a little bit quicker for some facilities and for some acreage, increase our acreage so that we are able to meet demand for some of these offtakes that are out there.
Yeah, I would, even love to see small projects, because, like when people come to me and express having an interest in growing hemp, my answer today is the same as it was, 5 years ago. Like, grow 2 acres, like try it out. Like, don't overcommit to like, I want to grow 100 acres or 1,000 acres, until, grow 2, grow 5, grow a couple different varieties and see how it goes. Cause like having it grow and having it be commercially successful aren't the same thing. So get yourself the experience now. And then in 3 years, when there are big demands for large acreage, you have what it takes and the experience to be successul. And it's not what people want to hear, but I still think it is the best route for people who, are looking to do it. And I'm also hopeful that we can sort of seize this opportunity, because farmers don't have preconceived notions about how to grow hemp, that we can show them how to use it with no-till practices and cover crops. And then when they see their hemp be successful that way, then that can encourage them to look toward transitioning all of their crops to being that no-till, climate smart, agricultural, sustainable type practices.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is one of our struggles in the Midwest, as you can imagine. Right now, acreage in Indiana is selling for about $12,000 an acre. And then when you take that, the cost of acreage, and I believe, I shouldn't even probably put a number out there, but I believe the rental value is probably about $400 an acre right now. But you take that and then you couple it with the pricing that is available and subsidized for corn and soybeans. It can sometimes be a tough call, but I'm loving it because more and more farmers are not only interested, but they're interested for the reasons that you've touched on, which is to incorporate with their no-till, or to start looking at carbon sequestration, to look at using hemp as the rotation crop. for me personally, I get so many calls, and the calls are primarily from Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, sometimes a couple other states. And, well, I have this, I have 2,000 acres and I'm, what do you think? And I said, I think that you should start out with, what you can afford to either lose or break even, right? And just get that into your rotation and work with us to learn about that. Because there is also the issue of, you touched on something where getting farmers who are used to growing corn and soybean and then bringing a new crop to them. So there's a learning curve. It's funny because I'm not an agronomist, but that is the one thing that is my passion. I love being able to be that person in the middle that communicates with the farmer. I mean, my favorite thing is to go out in the field, talk with them, and then help them get those problems addressed or their process. Like Marguerite Bolt from Purdue she's amazing. And so I'm excited about that. In Indiana, quite honestly, Erica, it's really funny. Michael Bowman he flew in last weekend, and he's aware of several regenerative farmers that are in the state. And I'm really proud that at last count, Indiana was like 4th or 5th in no-till, which is
fantastic.
If you drive through our state, you'd find it hard to believe because it's corn and soybeans
well, it's
everywhere.
True here. Like one of our, I live in Pennsylvania, and one of our members and one of our farmers in Pennsylvania, Steve Groff at Cedar Meadow Farm, he's been doing this since way before it was cool. Like, he hasn't tilled his field in more than 25 years. So being able to go out to his farm, and we actually hosted USDA and USITC there for a field day in August, which was fantastic. It's because when I first started, dealing with cultivation, like, I was always taught that you had to plow. Like, tilling was like, the properly, tilled bed was an essential part of successful hemp. And we tried no-till a few times in some of our test trials, and it was hit or miss. Like, some of them were utter failures and some of them were pretty good, but we didn't know what we were doing. So to see that there's people out there that have figured it out, and have the experience, that's why I'm hoping that we can use this as a broader educational tool, because growing hemp in a regenerative way is fantastic, obviously, but if it's not translated to the entire farming practice, it doesn't mean anything. But you got to start somewhere. And if you can start somewhere that can prove it as a success, then all the better.
Well, and into that end, that's why I'm so grateful for this, the opportunities for the hemp industry within the Climate Smart Commodity grants. I think that was just such a nice hand in glove fit for us, and hopefully we'll see some more roll out. I think they still have some announcements, so hopefully that'll roll out. But that has been very difficult because we don't have any subsidies. We haven't been, we haven't had a lot of grants available to us. So it's exciting to have that open the door. And really it's, I think what we will see and what I am hearing is that in and of itself will tighten our industry up. It will bring people closer together from different areas, expertise, to tighten that up and work on the supply chain while doing the research that's still needed.
And what do you think it means for the hemp industry to have a company like ADM include hemp in their grant reward?
So it's funny. I get so many different positions on that, right? In fact, after we had our hearing, a Cannabis Commission summer study yesterday in Indiana, and it was it's the most amazing hearing that we've had since I started this in 2013. The committee was prepared, they were receptive, and all of our team was prepared. And so it was fabulous. But I was listening in from the West Coast, cheering them on. But that was, that's kind of one of the issues too is, and now I just lost my train of thought. Okay. Tell me what you're talking
about. What does it mean to have a company like ADM start looking at him?
So I actually think that that's a good thing because ADM does have the resources I think the fear, that's where what I was referring to is we have a fear from the small farmer and especially the regenerative community to have large ag involved. But I want to believe that they will bring to the table additional research and tools. Purdue University is actually a part of that grant, and Purdue's heavily focused right now on regenerative ag, as are most. But I know our hemp team there is very focused, and I'm really excited to see if we're going to be able to play a part in that. So we can only be hopeful. I have always felt, and I still feel, that hemp is not going to be the conglomerate. It's not going to be, big ag that takes over. We have Beck's hybrids in Indiana, and they have felt, they've kind of tinkered around a little bit with it, but they feel like it's going to be its own niche. And that's what I hope for. But to me, if you have people with the expertise and the background that ADM has, that's looking into the different cover crops, I think that's a good thing, because it says they're talking.
Yeah, I agree. And I know that, especially coming from grassroots advocacy, like keeping big ag and the Monsantos of the world out of the hemp industry has always been, a passion play for a lot of people, and rightfully so. And I think my hope has always been that the small and more medium-sized farms would have enough of a head start in getting a foothold in hemp before the big boys started coming in and realizing that this was actually real. But on the other hand, if we're, one of the things I'm most passionate about is the environmental side of things. And it is big ag that has to change. And if hemp can be a catalyst for that change for big ag, like I'm kind of for that. Because like it's not the guy with 100 acres that's tilling, or the Amish guy with his horses that are, tilling their land, that are releasing the bulk of the CO2 back into the atmosphere. It is these massive Midwest farms and big ag. And if we can get them away from tillage, and we can get them away from just relying on Roundup ready crops,
absolutely,
that's a good thing.
No, and that's what it's going to take, and for me too, it also, so you have, wherever a person stands on it. In fact, I had a conversation with someone who's very politically connected about a month ago, and we were talking about animal feed because it would fit into their business plan really well. Hemp as animal feed. And his comment to me was, you have no idea what you're up against. You don't know how much they're fighting against you, and the industry doesn't even realize it. And so then people come back with that vein, that sort of thought with ADM and in large ag. But I don't look at it that way. I think as long as we can turn the page with all cover crops, with all, like you just said, the whole process, and hemp gets to play a piece in that.
Right.
I think that's where we're headed. And with this bio-based economy that we're looking at, I'm excited. It was in 2014. I went to a bio-based conference in Wooster, Ohio. Purdue had me go with them. I was probably I think there's 3 of us that were non-scientists in the room. And there was not a word. It was flax. It was canaf. And so I had my handy door panel, that was made from hemp from the early 2000s. And finally they, one of the Purdue people asked me to stand up and talk. And every single one of them said, well, you just have to get it legal. You have to get the stigma removed. You have to do this. You have to do that. But they also said you have to get funding so that we can research that specifically. Yeah. So time has passed, and now I'm ready to go back to that conference because Excellent. I want to hear him talking about hemp.
And speaking of conferences, I know one of the things that at least last year, like you really enjoyed working with FFA, and yes. Teaching the up and coming generations about some of the happenings with hemp. Are you still involved with that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'll be knocking on your door again. I'm really excited with SCOHO. I wasn't able to be on the meeting last night. SCOHO, to me, the standing committee that NHA has put together, is so representative of what I believe in, because you have all of these people from different associations at one table bringing such different perspectives and different priorities, and yet we all make it work, right? We come together. So I'm excited. And yes, I do. I really hope that we will be represented at FFA. I've been doing it since 2014. Last year, I have to share, we were there because of NHA, and also many thanks to New Holland. And Rachel Berry came up from Illinois, and we did hands-on hempcrete, these little ornaments or balls or whatever you wanted to do with them. But what happened was, and I won't go into it too much, but we had two ladies who then came in second place in the national competition. They came and introduced themselves. We met them, and they're using hemp in a project. And it's a very cool project. And thanks to you and Jeff spent quite a bit of time with them and talked to them about certain steps they needed to take from a legal perspective and going forward. And I just talked to them last week, and they're making great headway. And so it's an example of why we need to be there, because they are the future. We all love to say that hemp's the future. Well, then we need to be right there. And so
this is why we do what we do, right?
Yeah. Oh,
it's not all doom and gloom.
No, it was wonderful. And to watch the persona, watch everything change over the years being there, right? And we had live plants there, so that was really interesting. We had a lot of kudos from National FFA or from the association, and then some were, but once we educated them, they were fine. So looking forward to that. And then I know we've got, which one of my focuses right now in trying to reboot myself and how to focus is, I know there's a Echo Ag conference in Covington in November. I really hope that we will be able to attend as an industry. And we've all talked about it. Let's stop. We've got to quit talking to one another. We have to get out there, and we have to educate the other industries. We have to go to them and educate them on what we offer. Yes. And again, it goes back to Erica, where I get concerned about what we do with our resources, financial and human, right? If we're spending, and there's no one answer, but for me now, as much as I want to be around everyone in the hemp industry and I feed off of that energy and that knowledge that I gain, we have to pick other industries, conferences. We have to get out of ourselves. And I know you guys have done that. I know IND and some others have done it, but as an industry, we have to, in my opinion, make that a priority.
Yeah, we have to stop preaching to the choir. And yes. I think we'll find, so like NHA back in March, we did this Ag on the Mall event, and it was, of just agriculture, of which hemp was one of many crops represented there. And from that, and it was neat. It was a neat event on the National Mall, where there was all kinds of tractors and farm equipment set up, and several nonprofits from different crops were there. And we met people from the American Soy Association and the National Corn Refiners Association. And from that, they created a group called the Ag Bioeconomy Coalition. Okay. And NHA became one of the founding members of that, along with those agencies, which also includes NASDA. And there's 5 or 6 of us. I can't think of them all off the top of my head. But so to your point before, when you said like when it comes to hemp feed and stuff, that there's other forces kind of working against us, I can acknowledge that to a certain extent, but I also think it doesn't need to be that way. And by working with these other groups, hemp is a natural ally to corn and soy. We don't need to be direct competition. We can help improve the soil so their corn yields are better the next year.
Exactly.
And that's where it comes back to the education piece. And yes, we have to stop preaching to the choir. And that's what we have been traditionally doing. I'll always have a special place for, certain big hemp, conferences that are, should always stay. But in general, we need to be going to ag shows. We need to be going to conferences of manufacturers that produce products, things like home builder shows, things like that. Things where hemp fits in as an end use. It's time. It's been time.
Right. And I think COVID allowed all of us to sort of look at things a little differently. And I know, we did Hemp at the Crossroads for several years and are due to bring it back. And I'll just be honest, to me, I think we can do some things on a small local level through maybe networking options. Prior to COVID, we had network events everywhere all the time. And so we're trying to get back to that, because that FaceTime, that one-on-one, but people aren't quite there yet. We're just now getting there. But for me, and on behalf of Midwest Hemp Council and behalf of our members and behalf of the industry, I believe that any monies or resources that Midwest Hemp Council has will be best served getting out and pushing out into other areas, so that we can share that information and that education and make those connections to people who can take that farther. So I'm looking forward to it. Again, I appreciate everything NHA does. And it's like with the Hemp Fee Coalition, it's just such a great group. And so I don't think, when I say consolidation, I don't know exactly what that looks like. It's tough, but I think we're getting there.
I have kind of a vague kind of idea in my head. Now, whether it will ever actually happen, I don't know. I feel like there's certain organizations that have been focused primarily on cannabinoids and have been doing a pretty good job with that. I feel like there's other associations that have really great social networking skills and the ability to pool and collect data. And that's a lane that's extraordinarily important. And then there's others that, have been focusing on fiber and grain and regulatory. I think there would be some natural lanes that everybody could sort of kind of get in and support each other instead of feeling like we're constantly, opposed. Because for the most part, we all want the same thing. But to your point, it's hard to survive when you're running a nonprofit, yes. Executive director to executive director, it ain't easy. No. Because as much as you want to give and give and give and give, at the end of the day, there's bills to pay and there's, practical reality to deal with. Right. And it's not anybody's fault. And especially since, at least from our perspective, I don't know if you've had the same experience, but since the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill, the general public's engagement has dropped off immediately, because we're not fighting the man anymore and, giving your money to, fight government oppression. The nuances of the regulations of a hemp exemption or raising the THC level to 1% to help cannabinoid producers, it does not excite the general public enough to open up their wallets, especially when the economy has been kind of rough for a lot of people and we've just come off 2 years of COVID. It's kind of been the perfect storm, I think, for nonprofits, at least in the hemp industry. At least from where I sit, it's been
well, and I think you hit so I think you hit on something too, because excuse me, I go back to when I first started doing this, and it was at the point first we didn't have a name, and then we were INHIA. Everything was, every single thing was donated, right? Every week we had a group that we called the Mom Brigade, which was not me, it was the next generation. It was my mom, it was my mother-in-law, it was other moms that were always baking food, or they were showing up to support everything, right, along with all of us. So everything was completely grassroots. There was no till from which to pull. It was self-funded, and that has dropped off because now we are closer to being, we are businesses, we are an industry. So we're kind of in that place where we're not really grassroots, but we haven't ramped up 100% either.
Yep.
So it's going to fall into place. It's exciting. I like I told you, I personally I took kind of a step back trying to evaluate how I can be more efficient in what I offer and what I bring personally and through Midwest Hemp Council. But some things have been so exciting to have happen, over the last couple of months between the grants and between, the discussions. Like you have no idea how hard it was for me to not be in Montana, right? Because, and I&D is a perfect example of someone in this industry that has opened their doors. They've been very upfront about, look, this is what works. This is what not works. And this is why we all need to be together. And so I admire them so much because they're setting that pace.
Yeah. They're trying to prevent people from making the same mistakes they made. Like they are very selfless when it comes to wanting to see the industry succeed and not just themselves. Like they are fantastic people, like all around. No doubt about it.
And that's where, I suppose that's where I'm somewhat, when we talk about the alliance, going back to that, I get a little protective because not that I have a role to be protective of them, right? But, and they put themselves out there for anything, but they will have to, in my opinion, for that alliance to really launch soon, it will require I&D and some of the other entities to really step up and take the lead.
It will, and make no mistake about it, they're going to have the same herding cats type of problems that we've had in keeping an alliance together. I don't have any illusions that it's going to be like kumbaya and super easy, because there's going to be competing initiatives and agendas going on there as well. Especially because they're trying to put fiber and grain together. But I think if anybody can do it, I think they can.
100%.
And I think that they're going into it with their eyes wide open, like knowing that there's going to be challenges and having a willingness to address those challenges head on, which is something I think of as an industry. Like we've kind of sugarcoated a whole lot of stuff for a whole lot of years. And I've always kind of, like I always felt like I was always the Debbie Downer in the room, like pointing out like, it's not quite that easy. But I stand by that. And I think I've been proven right in a lot of areas. But pointing out that something's difficult does not mean it's insurmountable, but you have to acknowledge what's in front of you in order to be able to address it and to push past it. And we'll get there.
No, absolutely. And, I have to say that, it's kind of like these farmers will call me and they'll be like, what do you mean you're telling me not to grow? Or what do you mean you're telling me only to grow a few acres? I said, just grow with us, grow slow, work with us, but grow slow. And please, let's use these resources and this supply chain. But yeah, it is not as simple as throw out 500 acres,
Right. Yeah, if it was that easy, we'd be done by now.
Yeah, but I am excited. I think we're turning a corner. Eric, I know we're close on time here. I just wanted to encourage everyone to kind of just stay tuned. We're going to do something a little bit different here in Indiana. Sounds like you're maybe working on a similar project, but if everyone noticed, we had a fundraising concert on Friday. It was really fun. Mandy Kerr actually came in town from Global Hemp Association. Michael Bowman came in because he knew the artist, which is Clayton Anderson. And we were rolling out the first cannabis political action committee in Indiana and Grow Indiana Together. Our Justin Swanson is the point person on that, along with 3Chi and some other entities. I'm very proud of them because they're taking a very reasonable and professional approach to the entire cannabis industry. Their focus, quite frankly, is adult use. No qualms there. Midwest Hemp Council is going to stay over here in our lane, in my passion, which is grain and fiber. But we're going to work together Our goal is a cannabis commission sooner than later, hopefully at least by January. As we go into session, we'll get that set up so that we can prepare, we can close the loopholes and address the hurdles that still exist in Indiana with the hemp industry. For example, our farmers can't sell their flower. They can grow it, but they can't sell it and they can't transport it, and you can't use it. But you can buy D8 and D9 products on the shelf now. Okay. So, but you can't buy hemp flower. So we're trying to clean that up on that side. And while building a foundation and preparing for adult use, I don't even think, I'm not sure, but I don't even think we're really going to look for medical. I think it's either, let's just go to adult use and do it in a responsible, regulated way. And make sure at that table, we have the hemp industry represented, we have the marijuana industry represented, and that everyone's talking. And let's see what we can do.
Outside of when we conclude this interview, I would love to talk to you about maybe doing a webinar or something like that about specifically how the hemp and marijuana industries can coexist and both be successful in the same space. It's going to, and it's been an issue, it's going to continue to become a bigger and bigger issue. And it's one of those elephants in the room that a lot of people have been avoiding talking about. And I think that you'd be the perfect person to talk about it.
Yeah, I would love to, because it's an evolution for me as well, right? Since we all started this. An evolution from a professional standpoint, and where I could see that the entire cannabis industry, but even also my personal opinion on how that's happened and how the change in the proper regulatory framework would be a success.
Excellent. Well, once you get a little further along with your plans with that, let's regroup and do another one of these specifically about that topic.
That would be great. That would be great. And, stay tuned. Justin Swanson's going to be doing a lot of work. I just posted yesterday's hearing to my social media pages just to give him the kudos. I truly do not think that anyone realizes how hard that man works, and the quality of perspective that he brings, the balanced perspective and the quality that he brings to all of this. I mean, I learned so much from him. I really do. And so he's worked hard, and yesterday's hearing really paid off. It's one of the most amazing hearings we've had in Indiana, where the committee was prepared and they were engaged in asking the appropriate questions, and the testimony was spot on. Bo Whitney came. Bo Whitney was there, and we had some from surrounding states. So I am excited, and I'll be anxious to talk with you about that as we kind of get feedback. Excellent. On the hearing and the results. And
so send me the links to those things, and we'll make sure to put them in the ending slides of this video, so people who are watching can have the opportunity to check that stuff out as well.
Okay, will do.
So yeah, we went a little longer than the 20 minutes I told you we were going to talk, and I kind of suspected that would happen. Any final thoughts you'd like to share?
No, I am honored. I still do not really know how I ended up in this industry, but I'm so honored because I've learned so much, and I've met the most amazing people. Because in this industry, if you're here, you have to be here with heart and soul. You are not here just because of your wallet. And so I'm just excited about that. And again, Erica, and I've told you before, and I mean it, your straightforward clarity has benefited me significantly when things get cloudy and messy. So thank you for that.
I thank you right back. You've lifted me up when my spirits are down more than once. So I appreciate that as well. Okay, great. Well, I will definitely look forward to the next time. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. We hope you enjoyed this episode of In Conversation With, and stay tuned and join us for the next one. Until then, thank you.
Thanks.